Hello and welcome to this episode of Sidetreks. I want to start this episode off with a question. Have you ever heard of LiDAR before? LiDAR, or Light Detection and Ranging, is a remote sensing technology that uses laser pulses to create highly detailed maps of the Earth's surface. The lasers and sensors are usually attached to vehicles, aircraft, and even drones. It's incredibly useful for archaeologists because it can reveal hidden structures buried beneath vegetation or soil, places that might otherwise go unnoticed. It's been making the headlines recently, and for good reason. This amazing technology is giving archaeologists a powerful new tool to uncover the past. I'm excited to share this unique opportunity with you. Unlike many of the sites I visit, where information is scarce and we're often left with more questions than answers, this site in this video has documented details. On my other channel, The Trek Planner, I spend a lot of time going over Google Earth and LiDAR maps looking for fun places to explore. One day, while using LiDAR, I found something incredible, an area that looked like massive room blocks. A room block is a linear arrangement of connected rooms, often used for living, storage, and community activities within a settlement. In this case, the room blocks were built by the ancestral Puebloans. As I zoomed in, I realized just how big this place must have been. It wasn't a small settlement. It was enormous, likely one of the largest ancient cities in the Southwest that I've ever encountered. I couldn't help but think about how hundreds, possibly even thousands of people might have lived here. I switched to satellite imagery and quickly realized there was nothing visible at the site. The depressions in the dirt and sand were only detectable through LiDAR. Of course, if we visited in person, we might still spot the depressions, pits, and remnants of the ruins though. However, what I saw next was disheartening. Modern farm equipment, houses, roads, power lines, all in this area. I couldn't help but think about the possible destruction that happened to this place. And of course, this probably meant that this site is on private property. I shared this find with my Patreon community, and one of my friends, Aaron, seemed to know exactly what this location was. And he sent me an article about this location, and it confirmed my suspicions that this was once a massive ancient city. I mean, from end to end, it's about 2,700 feet in length, which is very large for a city 1,000 years old in the open desert. The ruins I encounter on my trips on the Trek Planner are usually much smaller than this. Let me share you some details from the article that Aaron sent me. This site consists of 3 major settlements, together containing over 160 kivas and 700 surface rooms. That's massive. To put it into perspective, Pueblo Bonito in Chaco Canyon, which is the pinnacle of ancestral Puebloan architecture, also has around 700 rooms. Pueblo Bonito is famous for its multi-story buildings, massive great kivas, and its role as a ceremonial and cultural center. This is a place I have personally been. I spent several days exploring Chaco Canyon, seeing many different types of ruins, going on many different hikes, and I highly recommend you going there. But let's get back to the article. One of the standout features of this site is its sophisticated water management system, including a reservoir. Reservoirs like this weren't uncommon in the ancient Southwest, and they highlight the ingenuity of these communities. For instance, over at Mesa Verde National Park, several reservoirs have been found near the cliff dwellings. These structures were essential for storing water in an arid environment, especially during periods of drought. It's incredible to think how these ancient engineers carefully planned and built these systems that could sustain large populations for generations. I don't think I've ever seen reservoirs like this in the wild before. I have come across smaller structures known as check dams. They're basically designed to catch rainwater for agricultural use. Now for me, I need to see this site visually. So I created a 3D model from a picture from that article that Aaron sent me. I tried to match up the model and the scenery as best as I could. It's not a perfect representation. It's just a basic model to give us an idea. So as you can see here, there's 3 separate communities, which I put all into one big city. And so up here, we can see the west ruin, and notice how all the kivas, except for this red square here, that's the Great House, which we see from Chacoan influence. All these circles outside here are kivas, and then it progresses into this middle ruin, which you can see more linear, connected room blocks, followed by kivas. this third ruin, which is called the main ruin, which has hundreds of rooms in this main ruin right here. And again, this isn't fully detailed. This is just to show you where structures were according to the drawing that I saw. And up here at the very top is the reservoir, connecting the west ruin with the middle ruin. I bet there is agricultural land all in between here. There's a drainage right below the reservoir. The article also details the timeline of this place. The earliest settlement, which is the west ruin, dates back about 1,000 years, during the 11th century. It included a great house, surrounded by smaller dwellings. Pottery styles like Mancos Black-on-white help archaeologists date these structures. However, it seems the area was abandoned for a time before being reoccupied. By the mid-1100s, the people constructed a reservoir to store water, a critical innovation in such a dry region, despite some springs nearby. The third and largest settlement is amazing. It contains 85 kivas, 400 rooms, communal plazas, and even a D-shaped structure, which is a hallmark of Chacoan influence. There's also a gray house, similar to those at Chaco Canyon, as well as a causeway connecting two parts of the site. On the maps, it's clear that there is a drainage that separated these two areas. This causeway might have served as both a practical path and maybe even a symbolic link between the settlements. Archaeologists say that by the 1200s, this ancient city reached its peak. The core area was surrounded by enclosing walls, but as the population grew, the village expanded beyond those boundaries. This approach to city planning stands in contrast to the other sites, where walls were typically constructed before settlement expansion. Over time, modifications to older buildings suggest the community adapted to changing needs. These sites stand out as a fascinating example of the community center succession model best described in the article. The West Ruin initially consisted of single-family clusters grouped around a great house. This arrangement was later replaced by a village characterized by linear room blocks with multiple kivas, evident in the middle ruin. Finally, the site evolved into a large, densely aggregated village, showcasing a dynamic progression of settlement patterns over time. The 3D model provides a clear visualization of how this community evolved. I know the timeline of events might be confusing, so I compiled everything together into two groups of information. First, the historical timeline, and second, the modern archaeological background. This site seems to begin around 840 to 880, which is called the Late Pueblo I period. During this time, a small village was established at the West Hill ruin site. Then there was an occupation gap from around 900 to 1050. The site was abandoned, and no evidence of black and white pottery indicates a gap in that history. During the Late Pueblo II period, which is about 1080 to 1150, the West Hill ruin was reoccupied. The next phase is the mid-1100s. The reservoir was constructed and used. Also during the mid-1100s, construction begins at the middle ruin with 29 kivas and 12 room blocks. A gray house at the main ruin begins construction. Then the causeway was built, linking the main ruin great house to the middle ruin. During the early 1200s, the middle ruin remains occupied, with pottery evidence showing a blend of Mancos, McElmo, and Mesa Verde black-on-white types. During the mid-1200s, the main ruin reached its peak, with 85 kivas and over 400 surface rooms, a D-shaped structure, and enclosed plazas. Enclosing walls constructed around the core area were also made. During the late 1200s, the main ruin village expands beyond the enclosing walls. The residential structures continue to be added, showing much more growth. The final occupation ends with regional emigrations in the late 1200s. Next is the modern archaeological background. It begins in 1918. The site was first documented during an excavation at the middle ruin. During the 1930s, limited excavations were conducted. Between the years of about 1989 to 1993, this site was heavily vandalized by commercial pot hunters. From 1994 to 1996, research was conducted on vandalized areas, collecting pottery and tree ring data, and also mapping the entire complex. Another very interesting aspect about this place is the pottery. The pottery discovered at these sites provides valuable insights into the past. At the West Ruin, the majority of the pottery consists of Mancos Black-on-white styles. The Middle Ruin reveals a balanced mix of Mancos, McElmo, and Mesa Verde Black-on-white styles. The main ruin is predominantly characterized by Mesa Verde Black-on-white pottery. Interestingly, pottery was also found near the reservoir, where McElmo Black-on-white styles were the most commonly represented. Unfortunately, like many sites, this one has faced vandalism, looting, and destruction. Archaeologists, however, have worked to preserve what they can, using pottery styles, tree ring data, and detailed mapping to reconstruct the story of this remarkable place. So what can we take away from all of this? First, it highlights the ingenuity and the creativity of these ancient peoples. Often, television and dramatic portrayals make it seem like there's some deep mystery here, making it easy to forget that many of these places are likely not shrouded in mystery at all. Perhaps they're simply home to ancient people trying to survive and thrive in a challenging desert environment. They built homes, hunted, gathered food, traded goods and ideas, followed daily routines, and created spaces for religious and ceremonial purposes. When I see a place like this, I feel a deep connection to it. It's a reminder that these places are part of our shared history. By learning from them, we can create a deeper respect and ensure their protection for the future. Thank you for joining me on today's Side Trek. I have a lot more coming soon, and I'll see you on the next one.